what have we done so far? We've talked about identifying our data. We've talked about locating our data. We've talked about controlling access to some of that data and paring it down. We've talked about some of the solutions, both through process and procedure. And we've talked about training and having plans in place and all of this fun stuff. So the question is, how do we make sure any of this stuff is actually working appropriately? And how do we make sure it's meeting our needs? And how do we make sure we're happy with it? And what are some of the tools we can do? How do we review our security program? And how do we identify risks and manage them? So this is probably the most important slide, although I have enjoyed talking to you guys, and hopefully I haven't bored all of you to tears. These are 3 no-cost resources. They are all funded by the government in some form or another. You have CISA, which is probably my favorite. They're an entire agency set up. They are all no cost. And these slides will be made available, I believe, to everybody after. Yep. So NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and the Cyber Readiness Institute, which is funded by the Department of Homeland. Threat reports are published daily at CISA, at NCAS. This will tell you what the landscape looks like today. I recommend sharing this with people that are important in your organization. The threat reports tell you the current activity in the threat landscape. Typically, it tells you who the big actors are for that given time. It also tells you some of the current attacks that are being run. And that's good for awareness. Hygiene vulnerability scanning. There are 2 types of vulnerability scanning, and I just want to take a second. There's internal and external. External is they come from the outside of your organization and they scan against your boundary. Internal is they're inside of your organization and looking at vulnerabilities. The hygiene vulnerability scanning that CISA does is external, and it is no cost. So they look at if you have your own network, your boundary firewall, some of your email domains, and they'll scan against that and see how you're doing. And that's worthwhile. Internal vulnerability scanning typically unveils a whole lot. It's like opening the closet door in the bedroom and seeing where all your kids stuffed all the stuff they said they cleaned up. It reveals a lot more. That does not do this. So just to be setting expectations. The cybersecurity corner for NIST. NIST they're the standard guys. So this is going to show you some of what they consider industry should be doing. This is going to be productive to a certain point, but if I'm being perfectly honest, and I love NIST, I'm going to talk more about them later, but they're not really the tool guys. The readiness program is outstanding. This is an amazing place for small businesses to start. This is totally no cost. There's a program you sign up for. You can assess yourself against it. There are steps they walk you through, 0 to 20, where they begin to help you with templates on plans and how you look at certain things, what kind of tools you're using, what some of the options for those tools are. This can go a very long way, especially if you have to do all of it on your own and you're just getting started out. This is an excellent place to start. I really can't stress that enough. And so use those tools to hold yourself accountable. Now, I was trained, like most people who come from the government, in a framework. And the one I put up here is from NIST. This is from a document called 800-171. There's also one called 800-53. Don't worry about any of that nonsense. What matters is the wheel. Because we talked about in the beginning, I boiled it down to 4, but this is all based off of NIST's framework. And the framework is a way to look at this ecosystem and to follow. And it's a wheel because you're supposed to consistently do all of it over and over. And it's identify, protect. I put detect and respond in the same group, but it's identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And so the idea here is when you're part of your recovery, as you begin to evaluate, like we said, all of those things you've already done. And when you do that, you want to look at the things that you are doing, your plans, your policies, your procedures, your partnerships, your tools, and you want to ask yourself, I think, 4 simple questions. Now, you're going to have more questions after these, I promise. But these are the 4 questions designed to get you thinking about each piece of your security. Identify the controls or the things you are doing to help yourself be more secure as they are right now. Just identify them. Then ask yourself, is this being done the way I wanted it to be done? And you want to do this at least annually. And you want to do this for everything you put in place, every plan you put in place, every tool you're using. Is this being done correctly? The next question is, if it's being done correctly, is it effective? Is it doing what I need it to do? Do I feel good about where we're at? Do I feel like it could be better, faster, smarter? Or is it good? And then what threats does this address based on what I've been looking at? And what threats are still at large to me? And all of this comes down to, at the end of the day, you need to make a risk assessment. And you need to say, this is very scary to me and high priority, or this is not so scary to me right now, and I'll address it later. So this is how you begin to do that. You should do this annually. This should be a consistent part where you ask yourself. And when I talk about effective, maybe it's really effective to making you more secure. Maybe it's really, really not effective for being good for business. And that's a balance you have to find. And I think anyone in this industry that does any kind of actual work with companies understands that sometimes the needs of the business and the needs of security aren't always 100% in alignment. And it's about finding a marriage between that balance. And a good provider, or a good IT guy, or a good consultant, or however, wherever you're going, is going to be able to find something that you feel comfortable with that at least helps mitigate some of the risk. All right, third-party providers. So if you're a small business and you don't have your own IT department, you're probably dependent on third-party providers. In some cases, that's outside IT companies that you're hiring in to form your IT department, essentially. You're contracting it out. Or it's vendors of certain products that you need. For example, restaurants use point-of-sale systems, POS systems. And those vendors, that means quite a bit to them. It's a huge part of how they do their business. And that vendor becomes very important. So how do you talk to them? Well, the most important thing you do is identify your needs, the needs of the business and what your concerns are for security. And you want to have a clear idea about this as best you can before you talk to them. Productive communications are honest communications. These are my concerns. This is what I need. This is my expectation. Can you do this? Can you not do this? What are you giving me? What is your reporting? You know, how long is, in the event that something happens outside of our agreement, what's the cost to me if I need to bring you in? Ask these hard questions. If you have a vendor, for example, let's say you have Microsoft 365 and it's critical to your business and you're the only IT person, you don't have third-party help. Do you know all the features within 365? Probably not. So who do you contact? Well, you can contact your vendor. And Microsoft, for example, I unlike most IT guys, I try not to pick on them too much. They generally have an actual pretty robust knowledge system to show you some of these tools. It can still be overwhelming. So do you call anyone? Do they have, how do you go about that? And then what are you trying to do? And maybe Microsoft themselves are not where you want to go. You go to a third-party provider who is a vendor of theirs. So managing risks with your third-party providers. When you talk with a third-party provider, they can only do what you ask them to do. And that's really the scary thing, right? Because you don't really know sometimes what to ask them. Engage in that dialogue with them. Talk to them about the risks you're concerned with. We're going to hear from Todd in a little bit. And Todd knows quite a bit about how those dialogues can be between companies. Be honest with them. And if you have a good rapport and you come to some kind of trust, you guys are going to be having a productive conversation about what risks are and where you stand and what the cost benefit of these things are. But take your time and have that honest dialogue. My hope is through this presentation, I have given you lots of things that you are asking yourselves and lots of questions and processes that are running through your minds so that if you do engage with a third party, you have some idea of where to go. But if not, there are the resources that I pointed to above. Those will also help you. And the cyber readiness program in particular actually addressed some of the conversations you can have with third party.